The workshop hummed with the familiar sounds of machinery and welding torches, but today something different caught Raza's attention. A small Zephyrian girl stood hesitantly at his workbench, clutching a damaged toy robot against her chest. Her pale blue skin shimmered with nervous patterns, and her large violet eyes darted around the cluttered repair shop with obvious anxiety. "Please, sir," she whispered in heavily accented standard, "can you fix Beep Beep?" Raza looked down at the mangled toy in her small hands. The robot had clearly seen better days. One arm hung at an unnatural angle, sparks occasionally sputtered from its chest cavity, and its head tilted at a permanent 45-degree angle. Most mechanics would have declared it beyond repair and suggested buying a new one, but Raza wasn't most mechanics. "Let me take a look, little one," he said gently, accepting the broken toy. "What's your name?" "Naz," she replied, wringing her hands. "My papa says humans are very good at fixing broken things." Raza smiled at that. If only her father knew how much practice humans had gotten at fixing broken things, especially after the Hegemony Wars. He set the toy on his workbench and began examining its internal structure with practiced eyes. The craftsmanship was exquisite, typical Zephyrian precision engineering, but designed for a child's play rather than military application. The neural pathways were fried, the servo motors had seized, and the power core was completely drained. It would take hours to repair if it was even possible. "This might take a while, Naz," Raza said, rolling up his sleeves. "But I think we can save Beep Beep." As he worked, Naz perched on a nearby stool, watching his every movement with fascination. She asked endless questions about each tool, each component, each careful adjustment he made. Raza found himself explaining the principles of robotics in terms a child could understand, occasionally demonstrating with simple analogies. Hours passed. Raza had always been good with his hands. It was a necessity during his military service, where a broken piece of equipment could mean the difference between life and death. Now, applying those same skills to a child's toy, he felt a different kind of satisfaction. The bell above his shop door chimed, and Raza looked up to see a tall figure silhouetted in the doorway. As the newcomer stepped into the light, Raza's blood ran cold. Admiral Thexavar of the Zephyrian Third Fleet stood in his workshop, his imposing frame draped in the dark blue uniform that had haunted human nightmares for decades. The Admiral's eyes, the same violet as Naz's but hardened by years of warfare, swept across the cluttered shop before settling on the small girl. "Naz," the Admiral said, his voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. "What are you doing here?" "Papa!" Naz jumped down from her stool and ran to the Admiral. "The human mechanic is fixing Beep Beep. He's almost done," and he explained how neural matrices work and— "Step away from my daughter," Admiral Thexvar commanded, his hand moving to the plasma weapon at his side. "Human." Raza slowly raised his hands, the tiny screwdriver still clutched in his right palm. "I was just helping. I know what you were doing." The Admiral's eyes had locked onto something on Raza's forearm, where his rolled-up sleeve had exposed a faded tattoo. That marking. The crimson falcon with spread wings. "Your Falcon unit." The temperature in the workshop seemed to drop several degrees. Naz looked confused, glancing between her father and the kind human who had spent his afternoon repairing her beloved toy. "Former Falcon unit," Raza corrected quietly. Admiral Thexvar's expression shifted from suspicion to something approaching awe. "You were at the Battle of Kepler Station." It wasn't a question. Raza nodded once, never breaking eye contact. The silence stretched between them, heavy with shared history. The Battle of Kepler Station had been the turning point of the Hegemony Wars, a desperate last stand where a single human battalion had held off an entire Zephyrian fleet long enough for civilian evacuation ships to escape. The casualties had been devastating on both sides. "You held the eastern docking bay," the Admiral said slowly, "for 18 hours, against impossible odds." "We held," Raza confirmed. "I lost my brother in that battle," Thexvar continued, his voice barely above a whisper. "Commander Yexavar of the 7th Strike Wing." Raza's hands trembled slightly. He remembered that name, remembered the Zephyrian commander who had led charge after charge against their positions, each attack more desperate than the last. "He died with honor," Raza said finally. "They all did." Admiral Thexavar studied him for a long moment, then slowly removed his hand from his weapon. You could have killed my daughter. Taken revenge for your fallen comrades. She's a child, Raza replied simply. The war is over. Papa? Naz tugged at her father's uniform. What's wrong? Why are you angry at the nice mechanic? The Admiral knelt beside his daughter, his expression softening. I'm not angry, little star. This human. He and I knew each other a long time ago, during a very difficult time. Nayaz seemed to accept this explanation with the easy adaptability of childhood. Well, he's almost finished fixing Beep Beep. Want to see? Raza returned to his workbench, acutely aware of the Admiral's watchful gaze. With careful precision, he installed the final component, a new power core he had fabricated from spare parts. The toy robot's eyes flickered to life, and it sat up with a cheerful electronic chirp. Beep beep, Naz squealed with delight, scooping up the robot as it performed a little dance routine. Thank you, Admiral Thexvar said quietly, approaching the workbench. What do I owe you? Raza shook his head. Nothing. It was my pleasure. The Admiral reached into his uniform and withdrew a small data chip. This contains the schematics for advanced Zephyrian robotics. Consider it payment for services rendered. Their eyes met again, and in that moment both warriors understood. The war had taken much from them. Friends, family, innocence. But perhaps in small acts of kindness and unexpected grace, they could begin to build something better. As the Admiral and Naz prepared to leave, the little girl turned back to Raza. Will you fix Beep Beep again if he breaks? Raza smiled, the first genuine smile he had felt in years. Anytime, Naz, anytime. The door chimed as they departed, leaving Raza alone in his workshop. He looked down at the data chip in his palm, then at his faded Falcon unit tattoo. Some things, he reflected, could indeed be repaired, even trust between former enemies. Outside, he could hear Naz's laughter as she played with her restored robot, and for the first time since the war ended, Raza felt something that might have been hope.